Hello, I'm Amy Zawi with the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report for Wednesday, June 12th. What happens in the UK doesn't necessarily stay in the UK. So do you remember back in history class when you learned about the Magna Carta? This was written in Britain in about the 12th century, and it was the first ever document that gave certain powers to the people or the citizens of a land and limited the power of the government. In that case, it was a monarchy. Some 600 years or so later, we had the same type of document in the US. We called it the Constitution. Now, the Beatles took hold in the UK in the 1960s, and within a few years, the British invasion of pop music swept across the shores of America, and we enjoy the music of the Beatles to this day. Well, sometimes UK doesn't export good or beneficial things, or perhaps export's the wrong word. It might just be a correlation. But be that as it may, the UK's parliamentary halls and the prominent political party, the Labour Party, which used to be the political home of many Jews, is now a mouthpiece for Israel bashing. So much so that even Hamas, a known terrorist organization, actually sent a thank you note to Jeremy Corbyn, the head of the British Labour Party. This should be alarming to British citizens, Jews, and non-Jews alike. Based on what's going on now in America among the Democratic Party, the same sort of wave seems to be coming across the pond, and it is a very sinister wave, and it is coming ashore. Why is it that the so-called progressive left are so quick to align with terrorists? The progressive left, which traditionally was campaigning on things like women's rights, minority rights, human rights, LGBTQ rights, also aligning with environmental issues and tolerance, well, it's aligning itself with a religion that, as of late, is birthing zealots who kill, as well as a culture whose doctrine is to oppress women and find no mercy or tolerance for alternative sexual preferences. So much so that the result is not just shunning or discrimination against women or people of alternative lifestyles, but oftentimes a violent end to their lives. This is what really perplexes me, that the Democrats in the US, for example, and the Labour Party in the UK are embracing candidates who live to cover and even aid these movements that seek to destroy other members of the human race. Not only that, they systematically refuse to learn, study, or address historical facts. Now, I believe that the bandwagon of Israel bashing and the resulting Jew hating that occurs is worldwide and is of the same spirit that has entranced generations past. But today, it is luring the next generation through a haze of emotional reactions and outright historical revisionism and lies. Why else would Jewish students, let alone a student of any faith or reasonable culture, at an American campus let a thing like Apartheid Week go unchallenged? And that spillover is not a discussion or criticism of Israel, but a non-coherent chants about Israel being occupiers, slaughtering and shooting Gazans, and saying more things that are not even true. And there is no contextual accuracy to the term occupying, and it's not discussed, at least that I can see, coherently. And to that end, the news media is now employing graduates of these universities, and they host and incubate the hate and lies and generate a new narrative that is not only untrue, but it is certainly dismantleable if you take time to just learn history and facts. And to further all this, we now have elected people. And it seems to me that the few elected people we have today in the U.S. Congress did not necessarily go through the four-year university system in the U.S. They are towing the same line and legitimizing all of this hate. You know, I saw a startling statistic on Facebook a couple weeks ago. And I'm not sure how true or accurate it is or where it was generated from, but it was from a reliable Fighting BDS website. It said that less than 50% of American Jews consider the issues surrounding Israel any kind of priority in their lives, and that they don't necessarily identify with the Jewish state. This is the only state in the world that houses their culture and history. And while I don't expect it by any means, every American Jew to desire to move to Israel or be Israeli, I would expect a certain amount of concern over its right to exist and defend itself and have the right to self-determination. Moreover, I would expect that it would be a grave concern that folks would seek to destroy Israel are indeed the same folks who are seeking to destroy Jews worldwide. So the concerns are not isolated or separate and distinct between a state and a people worldwide. So while what happens in Vegas may stay in Vegas, what happens to Israel often happens to all Jews, and vice versa. There is a reason why Iran calls the U.S. the big Satan and Israel the little Satan. Our identities are, in fact, a brotherhood. Our democracies are intimately connected, and our people, perhaps not by blood, but certainly by spirit, are connected by a foundation of a Judeo-Christian heritage that shapes and provides the framework for our laws, our national identity, as well as our day-to-day lives and habits, regardless of what religion we actually practice or not on our own. So the BDS movement, the Boycott, Divest, and Sanction movement, seeks to destroy Israel, and its founders are quite open to that fact. Thereafter, their role is to subjugate whatever Jews are left on the planet, and then the Christians, then the Buddhists, then the Zen, the Hindu, the atheists, the list goes on. And to top this all off, 2 American congresswomen do actively engage and support BDS actions, while it had already been bicamerally condemned. The U.S. Congress, both sides of it, and both political parties have condemned the movement of BDS as anti-Semitic. I would like you all to know that Tlaib and Omar and others continuously bash Israel for supposed mistreatment of Arabs who identify as Palestinians. Arab Israelis not only enjoy rights that are offered no place else in the Middle East, the UN continually condemns Israel for its efforts of self-defense and preservation. Yet, Arabs and non-Jews in Israel enjoy more human rights, access to education, livelihood, and the pursuit of happiness than any of the neighboring nations. What's even worse is that these activists, these BDS supporters who want to point a finger at Israel for every ill that a Palestinian may be feeling, fail to recognize the abhorrent activities that are happening to many Palestinians in nearby nations, specifically in Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia have documented events that have hurt Palestinians for generations. You know, when the Jewish communities in Iran and Egypt and Iraq were basically expelled after 1948, Jewish families that lived in these countries for centuries, they knew themselves as Iraqis or Iranian or Egyptian. They had to leave with almost nothing but the clothes on their back, and they fled to Israel. Israel did not put these people in refugee camps. They did not relegate them to the outskirts of town, but they assimilated these families into Israeli society and to become Israeli citizens. That same courtesy has not been demonstrated by the neighboring nations. In Lebanon, in Jordan, Palestinian camps are over 70 years old. Palestinians are not allowed to integrate into society and enjoy the school systems or the medical care or the opportunity to work that the Lebanese or the Jordanians may have. The Palestinian people inside Saudi Arabia are now suffering by great numbers, being sentenced to all sorts of crazy lashings and years in prisons and even death for their expressions and their writings and their artwork on social media. But I have not heard Tlaib mention that her Palestinian cousins in the Middle East are suffering so greatly under these regimes. Her finger is always pointed at Israel. I wanted to bring these things to light because the BDS movement is blatantly anti-Semitic and insincere, because if they were sincere, they would be looking at the conditions of Palestinians in every jurisdiction and fighting for their protection, and they do not do this. Something to think about. Shavua Tov, and have a great week.